Welcome to Living Life Juicy, the podcast where we explore how we can be present and kind as we do great things. My name is John Losey. I'm kind of the host and guide of this. I've got some other channels out there, including the Growing People podcast, where we provide resources and insights on how people and groups develop, including we just started doing these explainer videos. So if you want a short video about a specific topic that you can throw into a course or to a program, we create those. We've got over 50 of those videos up there right now. Also, check out the intowisdomgroup.com, intowisdomgroup.com. That's where we guide people and groups to their next best step towards growth and sustainability by designing experiences and resources to develop individuals and professionals. Also, just my last little pitch here, my new book called The Pottery Panda, you can check out at potterypanda.com. Today, we have, it's my pleasure to have a nice little chat with Tim Walther. He's a resident of Jackson Hole up in Wyoming, as a seasoned expert in applied psychology and experiential learning, also team development. His company, Grand Dynamics, puts on amazing events for corporate groups and teams that simulate the adventures that happen out in the wild. I first met Tim about 20 years ago at an experiential learning conference, and he's never stopped pushing himself to learn more about human performance. As a matter of fact, he uses his life as a lab. We reconnected during COVID. He's another COVID blessing. And we started exploring the possibilities of using virtual tools to help people and teams reach their full potential. This stuff we did together, it all culminated in an all-in cold water plunge we did virtually on New Year's Day, 2021. I want him to share more about his new book, All in Adventures. But before we do that, I want to learn more about Tim. So Tim, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. Super excited to have the conversation and keep our connection going, and really stoked about what you got going with your podcast and all your work and everything else. So yeah, let's do it.
I don't even know if you remember that we met at Tom Leahy's conference a long time ago. Like 20 something years ago. And when I was still full on into the adventure world and all that, when my elbows and shoulders and knees still bent, but you just kept on, and it's been fun watching you as you, again, I think you use your life as a lab where you try out everything that you teach and that you lead other people in.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, absolutely. That's been one of my tenets when we create events and experiences for our corporate clients. I feel like I need to model that, right? Model the challenge that I expect other people to have or go through and learn from. So yeah, it's all part of the fun and all part of my personal passion, just the world of adventure, in all sorts.
So when you how do you describe what you do? Like especially if it's somebody new, not in the adventure world, how do you describe what you do?
It depends on who I'm talking with. So if I'm talking with a corporate event planner, a meeting planner that puts on events, then I'll describe our company as a company that creates experiences for corporate events. And if I'm talking to a CEO or an executive that's having a challenge with their board and looking to work through some issues on their team, then I'll describe our company as a team and leadership experiential training and development company that really specializes in executive retreats to facilitate some of the growth and the team performance for executive teams. If I'm talking to a climber in Jackson, I'll say, yeah, I'm a climber and I have a company that supports my climbing habit. No, no, it's the essence of it is I love creating experiences, and the combination of adventure and personal growth with professional growth with a framework of psychology, that's the stuff that gets me excited and passionate about it. I mean, I don't even consider it work. I love what I've been doing. We just celebrated 25 years in business. And people are like, how can you do the same thing for 25 years? I'm like, well, if it was the same thing, I wouldn't be doing it for 25 years. So there's a constant evolution in the work that we've done and all the different value propositions that we've been able to provide to the corporate market specifically. And to me, that's just, it's part what makes life feel successful for me, is that I don't really feel like I'm working because I'm constantly tapping into the creative side of envisioning the next thing, reinventing ourselves and our companies and services, and really just continually evolving, right? So it's a big part of life. You got to keep changing and growing.
Yeah, and I know I'm not very good with sketching or painting or things like that, but I view programming as my palette, and being able to not only use the same colors, my color schemes in order to paint an experience or to create an experience for somebody, but also like experimenting and playing with new combinations of things. And in that way, it's like I view what you do as artistry. And because it truly is the creative process of designing and creating experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. It feels very much like the art. I mean, certainly there's a lot of being an entrepreneur and making all the business decisions and doing all the marketing and the admin, all that sort of stuff. That's one thing. But when it comes down to the actual deliverable of the experience, whether it's a 2-hour amazing race team building event or a 500 person mountain seminar, that is when the artistry really, and the nuances, right? There are subtleties to these experiences that after doing this sort of thing for many, many, many years, there's a fine line between doing something that's really outstanding and doing something that's mediocre, right? And I'm not the mediocre guy. I'm not the guy that strives for something that's okay or good or fine, right? I want to excel. I want it to be the best it can possibly be, right? That's and
we had this conversation about the word fine.
Yeah.
Technical stuff, to me, you gotta worry where you look at the details. And there's certain things that you need to just go, you know what, your audio is just fine because there's not much that we can do to make that better. But I'd rather fail spectacularly, go down in flames, than be okay. Hey, that's just okay. That's just, I think that it's not trying to be novel. Because I'm definitely, there's so many people out there that just try to do something new and different, regardless if it fits the outcome that the client wants. To me, it's not about being novel. It's about being better and continuously better. Now, novelty has its place, but first of all, if it's novel to you especially an adventure facilitator, it shouldn't be novel because you've got to take people safely through an experience. And if you're out there going, hey, this is novel and it's fun, but I've never gone down this steep a hill cross-country skiing. So it's, yeah.
Right. There's a difference between leading the experience and participating in the experience. And needing to know what your role is in each of those things. Right. And man, so many lessons from the types of adventures that I've been doing and the corporate events that we've been delivering. And so
tell me this, you brought up an interesting thing, because in order to be successful, you can't just do the events. How do you blend you do your events, but you've also blend the business aspect of it? How do you manage that, and how do you blend that?
Blend it, you mean from a service delivery aspect, or from a like just running the business aspect?
Running the business aspect, because you can't just, you don't just deliver events. You run an organization, you run a company.
Yeah. Well, you got to have a team of people, right? And so certainly I do a lot of things, and I do have a core group of people on our team that help with marketing and help with operations and contracting and accounting and all the business functions, right? And that's a constant that's just a constant evolution as well, right? We're training in team development and putting on experiences, while our own internal team is our lab for how well we're working together to accomplish what it is that we're doing. And it's not just our full-time team that helps run the business side, but we have probably in the realm of 30 very active contractors and a list of about 100 contractors for our events that come and go depending on the type of event that we're producing. And I love having those conversations with the contractors as well, too, right? Like yourself. And it's like, hey, what's possible? Here's the outcome of the program that we're delivering. This is, what do you guys think? Like, lots of times I want to bring in the expertise of the experience that other people have as well. I mean, as much as I've done, it's just like a great facilitation in the design aspect for the client, right? So when I look at these different events and experiences, you got to tap into the resources of people, and you can't do it all yourself. And to your question, it's like, okay, understand what you're good at, understand what you like doing, understand what has to be done. If you have to do it, okay, like, just, it's called work, right? There's certain things that everything is not going to be ponies and rainbows, but you need to focus and sit down. I got to do the financial accounting every once in a while, and instead of having to do that, I sit down and I become a financial wizard for 3 hours, and I focus and I do the best possible financial wizardry that I can, and make it as enjoyable as possible. Put some music on, create a nice environment, whatever. Try to take some of those things that aren't really that fun to do and make them as fun as possible, reasonably, but get the work done. And really tap into the expertise of people around you to help you do the things that you're not really that great at, So,
Well, even the things that you are great at, because you're great at putting the program together, but in getting the insights from the people you contract and getting their passion in there, all of a sudden they have ownership and passion about the program that they're leading. And it's not just about you doing all the stuff that you like and are good at, it's tapping into what they're good at. Even if it's that, how do you tap into that your financial, the person who normally does your financial wizardry, and get them passionate about it? I think that's a brilliant perspective on getting the most of the people that you work with.
yeah, the tenet of people support what they create, right? If they have ownership in the process, and the same goes for business applications, whatever it is that you're doing, right? Whether you're making dinner at home or you're creating a complex event that you're producing, people support what they create. So if they have a feeling of engagement and involvement, and like they have some input in the process, then that engagement is going to go up, then the ownership's going to go up, then the how involved they are, and it just makes a lot of sense. And you can do this in a lot of different ways, just by asking a question, for allowing people to have a little bit of input, just by knowing people that you actually care and you want to hear what their opinion is. It makes a huge difference, huge. So I'm always thinking about, how can I increase the engagement in whatever this thing is that I'm doing and creating, and that goes on daily,
So I want to hear a little bit about your origin story. How did you, like, what's the path that you took to get to Grand Dynamics 25 years, a new book? Tell me a little bit about your origin story, the path you took. There you go.
New book, you said it. Here we go. All in Adventure Stories.
Available on Amazon.
Available on Amazon. Yeah. I know. Great question. So a lot of different ways to go about this, I guess. I mean, I grew up, I was born in Knoxville, Tennessee. We lived there for the first 8 months of my life, and then we moved to Decatur, Georgia. And I spent the next 10 years there. And then we moved to New Hampshire, my parents. So I have one brother who's 4 years older, Todd Walther, and then Bob and Peg Walther are my parents. My father is an FBI agent and was an FBI special agent in the FBI. And so that framed a lot of how I looked at the world and how I began to interpret things. Where we grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, my parents were like the ultimate non-helicopter parents, right? They were just like, okay, you're leaving for the day, come back by dinner, good luck, and we would go off in the woods of Georgia, with creeks and filled with, snakes and all sorts of animals, and would just be playing ourselves, making things up, whether it's playing a game of Army or, Cowboys and Native Americans, or whatever the case might be, whatever we were inventing at the time, building forts, doing all that sort of stuff. That began the foundation of just exploration, independence, challenging things that would normally be comfortable, so to speak. And those experiences, they came with some incidents, with some things that happened. I fell out of trees. I stepped on bees' nests that got, I remember got stung by some 50 bees or something like that, and was walking through the woods in my shorts when I was like maybe 6 years old or something. And so there were incidents, there were consequences of going out into the woods by yourself. But guess what? I did those things, and I think they had a dramatic impact on my capacity to know that I can explore, that I'm going to live through some of these different scenarios, and that people had a belief that I could do it as well. And I did have an older brother, which I was always chasing around and trying to live up to as well. Right. That expectation, and trying to keep up as a little brother to my older brother. So a lot of those dynamics, and the I would say the other big influence, like as a childhood, was, well, there's a few different ones, but playing Dungeons and Dragons as a role-playing game. That, talk about just for hours on end, creatively imagining the mission and going to save the princess and fighting dragons, and creating the characters and imagining these different missions. I mean, they were constantly, you're going on a mission, right? To do something with your team of people that have these magical skills and capabilities that you need to tap into at the right time. You got the wizards, you got the thieves, you got the fighters, you got all these things, these characters that you need to draw upon to become successful, to be able to save the princess, right? I mean, and those types of things while you're fighting off all the monsters of various different types. That had a big impact on me, on where I ultimately wanted. When I came to Jackson, I was like, this is it. I'm living out a Dungeons and Dragons scenario. Like when I go into the mountains, I couldn't have been happier, because I was like, this is actually real life. I can like live out Dungeons and Dragons in real life,
Yeah, I had similar upbringing in suburban Southern California, and we were surrounded by, believe it or not, there's a nice little mountain here called Boney Mountain. And I had two older brothers, so I was chasing them all around. But me and my friends, we'd go out, and then, when it was dinner time, we'd be out in the fields and we could hear our parents yelling, "Hey, it's dinner time." Or when the street lights came on, that's when we came back. And that independence and just playing with friends in the field with nothing else around, inventing your fun. But I hadn't put it together. For me, your Dungeons and Dragons experience was my team sports experience. Learning all that kind of interaction, learning how to be part of a team, learning how different roles play in order to get to where you need to go. And so I think I love the connection to Dungeons and Dragons, because it's so real. When I got into the corporate world, there's a lot of people who talk about team sports, and it falls flat on over half the population. Powerful connections, but if you weren't there, you don't make the connections. I think the imagination that it takes to play role-playing games puts you in, so you're present with whatever group you're in and whatever quest they need to go on.
Right. Yeah, you were football was your sport, right?
Well, everything when I was a kid, that turned into football and wrestling. And then I coached. I found out that I love football playing, but coaching wrestling, you can't coach wrestling without wrestling. And in a lot of ways that like when you're talking about, when you are using your life as a lab and then bringing it out to corporate populations, for me, coaching wrestling was you can talk athletes through whatever move or whatever mindset, but until you get on the mat and show them what chain wrestling looks like, what linking moves together and coming out with, you need to have 5 moves in mind when you step on the mat. And when you run out of 5 moves, you should already be thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead. So that's the mindset that I loved coaching. I mean, football, I just liked hitting people and running around and hopefully not get hurt too bad. But with wrestling, it was like, that was one of the most intense experiences that I had, not wrestling, but coaching wrestling.
That's That's cool. The two main sports that I had that were integral was soccer was my main thing that I played all starting very, very young, all the way through college and then at post college, and still play soccer now and really enjoy going to World Cups and the whole thing about soccer. Also Messi coming to the United States and playing for Miami and taking a team that was in last place and coming and winning the championship and completely transforming US soccer because of Messi coming in and the excitement around all that. Anyway, a little bit of a distraction, but soccer, the whole team element, the grind, the fitness, the communication, the planning, the strategy, the seeing the moves in advance, the anticipation, all these different things, they come into relevance when you begin to look at how they all interrelate and how the elements of team sports can make an impact on how people work together in business or as a family or in life or whatnot. So yeah, soccer was my big thing, and that had a huge impact on me. And the other one was martial arts. Studied my Uncle Doug. Big shout out to Uncle Doug. He took me under his wing, and we started studying American Kempo, which is more of a street fighting form. And that went on for several years until kind of violently got my ass kicked by the sensei during one of the belt competition, the belt tests or whatever. And my uncle was there. We were just like, so I stopped training with that particular sensei and went to another guy after that incident, and started studying Wallum Kung Fu with another sensei, which was amazing. And that led to competition fighting. And, as you might expect, all the different things that go into martial arts and the training and the discipline and your confidence and all these different things also had a big impact. So all these things were part of my early years origin story before I got into, college and adventuring and stuff like that. But that was my foundational, like young years.
Yeah. Well, what brought you to Jackson? Tell me about from a southern northeastern boy to Western mountains.
Well, thankfully I had an older brother that was a great model for me that I wanted to be like. And he happened to come out to Jackson on a road trip with a girlfriend that wanted to get a job in Yellowstone for the summer. So he followed her out here, and she got a job in Yellowstone, and they were out here together, and they broke up, and he stayed. And I came to visit him, and I just came to visit him when I was my first summer break, just for a couple weeks. I actually had another business that I was running during college too, during summers and whatnot. But I came out to visit Todd, and just eyes opened, like, wait a minute, what is going on here? It was like going into the Matrix or something, like some alternative universe of like, oh, this is like a completely different way of living. Like I had no concept. It'd be like, I don't know, going to some international city that you've never been to, and just seeing how completely different everything was. And I just hadn't had that exposure mentally or emotionally or physically to come out and go, wait a minute, you're telling me that people climb mountains for fun as an adult, and that's what like people do? Like I thought that was what kids did. Mountaineering isn't actually a thing that people do. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And my brother took me up one of the biggest mountains in the Teton Range. You can't really see it in this image, but it's over there, Mount Moran, on the CMC route. And my life literally changed. I mean, it was just being out here and seeing that you could have adventure sports as part of your daily living. I was like, okay, how can I have more of this in my life? Like the adventure experiences, whitewater rafting, mountain biking, mountain climbing, things like that. And it started to churn like the ideas of like, okay, well, you can be a guide in one of these things. You can guide people up mountains, or you can guide people down the river. And maybe that's something I'd like to do. But Is that what I want to do all the time? Or, you know, a lot of people in Jackson, they come out, they have PhDs and they're waiting tables, right? Really, really smart community of people around here. And you know, it's filled with people that just want to have experiences and will, I don't know, trade whatever ambitions in certain realms to be a waiter at a high-end restaurant and do that to have every single day until 3 p.m. open and available to go out and enjoy and explore nature and then work in the evenings. And that's a pretty common cultural thing too. But Todd was out here. I came out to explore, and I continued my studies at Ithaca College in applied business psychology while thinking about how I can combine some of these things together. Because it wasn't just adventure that I was interested in, right? I was like the psychology and the business and philosophy. I was way into philosophy. And in fact, my father, well, I had an interest. I told him when I was deciding on my major, I'm like, oh, I want to major in philosophy, you know? And he's like, yeah, no, you're not going to major in philosophy. He's like, you got to have the beef. I'm like, the beef? What's that? He's like, business. You have to understand business. That is what makes the world go round. And if you don't understand business, you're going to be on the low end of the short totem pole, so to speak, of life. And so I decided, okay, well, what else am I really interested in? And that was psychology. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus on business. I'm going to focus on psychology. I'm going to integrate the philosophy as kind of my electives, and the corporate communication was what made for this blend of this degree that I got. And so then I just started trying to figure out how do I combine the adventure and the business and the psychology and all that sort of stuff. So
it's funny as you talk about that. So, because I got a degree in biology, thinking I was going to sports medicine or coaching or something,
yeah.
But then I really got into the philosophy side of things, and so I finished my science stuff really early, and then rounded out the rest with literature and philosophy courses. But as you were talking about it, it made sense. In my grad school, I was introduced to the concept of praxis. And the way I understand praxis is the interpenetration of action, reflection, and theory. And I see business is action, philosophy is reflection, and psychology is theory. And it's not one, two are good, one isn't nearly enough, two is okay, and we hate that word. Three is where you find that the fullness of it. And then I stepped back, and it was funny because my biggest influence around instructional design was scuba diving.
Wow, really?
Because you can't advance in scuba without three things. You have to take the class, you have to demonstrate skills, and you have to have experience. You have to have a certain number of dives before you can move forward. You need all three things. You need the action of log dives. You need the experience of the actual like course, and you need the reflection that comes in. But all three things create mastery. And so you could have the person who's been skiing for 20 years, and they might be able to go down Black Diamond, but they don't have 20 years worth of experience of skiing. And they're not continuing to grow because all they're doing is what they've been doing for 20 years. And it's not growth. What I love about what you do, and as I follow your adventures, every single one is about stacking. It's about adding. It's about going further. I know, tell me a little bit, and I want to get more business later, but you call yourself a waterman now. Was that always the case?
Yeah, we can use that term loosely. Well, I get loosely, I guess. But yes, I'm a waterman, and I think it's important to own the thing that you are and you want to be even more of. Just because a waterman to me is like, yeah, it's a specialist in the water, right? You have some skills in whether it's navigating, running rivers, whitewater rafting, or scenic rafting. I have a fair amount of experience and skill in that realm. Whether it's free diving or swimming, ocean swimming or endurance swimming, or holding your breath and free diving. Yeah, that's a big element of exploration, right? And to all these elements, the water elements, are portals into a deeper experience in life, right? So you can imagine going on a beach vacation. I used to think about this before I actually, heard about blue water hunting and what that was. But I used to think about the idea of going on a beach vacation. Now, when most people think about beach vacation, what do you think about? You think about hanging out on the
Yeah,
beach.
margaritas at the bar.
Margaritas at the bar,
Flowery
at the
drinks.
pool. You're at the pool, you're doing this, you're reading a book, a great book on the beach, and you're looking out at the ocean, right? There are some people that think, okay, I want to charter a boat and go fishing, something like that, maybe that might. But when you're looking out at the ocean, do you see limitations? Like, I can't go out further than just the wave break. Maybe people are surfing or something like that, like, kind of shoreside action and activities. Or do you see like possibilities, right? And to me, when I started shifting my mindset into the possibilities with the ocean in particular, someone told me a story about people that went out into the blue water, which is offshore, however many miles, but offshore. So there's no bottom, basically. You can't reach the bottom. I mean, hundreds of feet, if not thousands, in the ocean. And these guys going out into the blue water and then just diving off the boat and diving down to 100+ feet, holding their breath for 3 minutes at a time, and hunting for big fish. Someone told me that story and I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, wait a minute. No. This what? The people actually do that? And it was like, yeah, this is what people are doing. I was like, okay, I gotta check this out. Because it's interesting when you have some unconscious incompetence, right? You don't even know that there's something else out there to be aware of that's even a possibility, right? Then it's like you're in your own little world until someone comes to you and says, hey, have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about considering the possibility of something like this? Right. And it happens all the time in life and business and whatever. You become exposed to something and then you think, wow, I didn't know that before. How am I going to find this and explore this? And then how do you go about the skill set of getting into doing it? Right. So yeah, the waterman aspect, I was like, man, I just really want to explore the free diving, because all these different things, whether you're rafting on a river, down a wild river for multiple days and camping, or whether you're swimming across a lake where you can't see the other side, or whether you're holding your breath and you're going deeper in the ocean than you've ever gone before, and all of a sudden you hear the sound of an orca whale while you're floating in what feels like space. All these things are, to me, access to a deeper experience of life, right? Like, I had this experience and I continue to seek out the experience of free diving and being in the middle of the deep ocean, so peaceful, so calm, and interacting with nature, with animals. Like, that is reserved for people who train and have the mental and physical commitment to train to do things that most people won't do. And to me, to have this capacity, and it doesn't even have to be an extreme capacity. I mean, this is like available to people to have these deeper things. It's just a question of like, do you want these types of experiences in life, right? So yeah, the skills and the waterman aspect of the water-based things start to sound repetitive probably, but it's like these are portals into deeper experiences in life, right? And that's what I love about it, and that's why I'll continue to hone these skills and continue to keep seeking that out.
Yeah, and I use the term waterman. My background, I worked on a boat that did stuff off of California, then off of Hawaii. So the concept of real waterman is about the true surfers in Hawaii.
Yeah.
That were not just surfers, but they were open water in their dugout canoes, in their outriggers, and like the navigation that they did. And what it was is a waterman was somebody who was deeply skilled in multiple aspects of living in the ocean for Hawaiians. And then for me, that was always it. It was just, I held the people who I really considered watermen were just, they're amazing at what they could do with anything in the water. But then when you use the referenced it for yourself, it's like the watermen of blue water diving and blue water hunting. But then also what you're doing on rafting, and what you're doing is high altitude swimming. I can't imagine these watermen in Hawaii up at altitude. They would be dead. Yet the amazing physical feats that they do at sea level, and then you're doing multiple skills at altitude in lots of different water conditions. And to me, that's just as much a waterman as these other amazing people that I met in Hawaii. So that to me it's crucial. And some of the things that you're talking about, a lot of people try these things, but because they haven't done the training or the homework, they either come away with a horrible experience because they weren't ready for it, or even worse, don't come away from the experience.
Right. Yeah. It's, adventure experiences are not without risk, and it's there's a lot. There's a lot that goes into that for sure. And a big part of what I feel like is my cosmic duty in life that I've been given is to share some of the processes and methods that I think that people can benefit from when you want to explore and you want to go deeper in any of these different realms, and particularly the realms that I've explored myself and learned from, and thankfully am still alive from. Could have gone either way on many occasions, and I got lucky. Some of my friends did not get lucky. Best friends that are gone and dead, from adventure experiences. A lot of people, there are people that die every day doing different things, and those things can be prevented largely, I think. So,
well, here's the thing. A lot of times it's a lapse that happens out there. And I've been on the good side of lapses, thankfully. But I see what you do is sometimes in the corporate events, but definitely whenever you're preparing or getting others prepared for an adventure activity, it's not about you making them safe. Although you do everything you can to create a safe environment and all that kind of stuff, it's about you helping them take control so that their safety is theirs. Because you can never make them safe. You can do all the precautions that you want, but ultimately my safety is my responsibility. And that locus of control being internal, so they're not looking at you, oh, Tim's going to keep me safe. It's, I'm going to listen to Tim because he has experience, but my safety is my responsibility.
Well, it ultimately comes down to decision making, right? And in order to make a good decision, you have to have an understanding of all the variables that go into that decision, right? And so
I'm working with some professors that are high end. They're doing high end assessments around judgment, and they don't even include decision making as part of judgment. What they say, judgment is that moment where you take you've the perception, you've gathered all your information, you've synthesized that information to the best couple of choices, and then you act on those things. Decision making is just that one moment. It's everything else that creates good judgment.
Yes, completely agree. It's interesting. I keep having this thing flash through my head. Yesterday, okay, I was up in the Tetons over there and doing attempting a complex mountaineering route that I've been wanting to achieve for a few years now. I've been focusing on this particular thing. And it involves climbing one mountain peak, getting to the summit, and then doing a complex traverse in between that mountain summit and another mountain summit, and then going down like a loop like that. But the crux of the thing is doing this complex traverse. I mean, and you got to go down steep, very exposed terrain. You have to figure out pinnacles, whether you're going on which side of them, over the top of them, how to get around them, and just weaving your way across this, fairly long mountain series of obstacles to get up to the other side. So without going too deep into the story, we started early, alpine start. We got up to the summit of the first thing around 9:30 in the morning. We're making, pretty great time. We started really early, but we were on the summit and we're looking at the traverse, and we look at the sky, and all of a sudden the sky was filled with all sorts of clouds, many of them dark, clouds. We're looking around, we're looking at the types of the clouds, we're looking at the depth of them, we're looking at the radar, and we're judging how much time it's going to take us to get across through this traverse and safely to the other side, where we're not going to be in super exposed terrain where we might have to bail in the middle of something, and what's the consequences of having to leave, and what kind of gear we have, and taking all these things into consideration, right? And after some degree of evaluating all these things, we made the decision to not attempt the traverse and to go down and, leave it for another day, right? And we start going down, and it starts raining a little bit, and we're like, oh yeah, great decision. And we keep going down, and then all of a sudden the clouds just move through, and the sun comes out, and we're halfway down, we're almost halfway down the mountain at this point, bailing on the objective. The sun comes out, and it's a beautiful day, and all of a sudden we're looking up going, if only we had just gone ahead and attempted it, it would have been fine, right? But in that moment, it could have gone either way, either direction. And I'd rather be safe than sorry, as they say, and particularly with these things. And you immediately start to reframe the experience, right? But
and this gets into that was still a great decision. Regardless of the outcomes and the results, you got to look at all the information you had at the time, and you look at that and evaluate your decision, not on the outcome, but on your process of making the decision.
Right.
And I could do this all day. In fact, I'd want to, but how does that jive with your all in? Because I want to get to that definitely.
Well, so I'll give you the real quick high level. This is the book, All In Adventure Stories. There's 18 different adventure stories in the book. Largely, they're things that went wrong over the last 30 years, all different types of adventure sports: skiing, rock climbing, alpine mountaineering, endurance swimming, stand-up paddleboarding, whitewater rafting, free diving, abalone diving, stuff like that, ultra running, all different adventure sports. Now, throughout the process of going through these things with various different people, learning skills, all that stuff, and the lessons that I would learn on each of these things. And these are 18 stories. I mean, I've done thousands of adventure days and experiences, and I had lots of lessons that came into this method that ultimately is towards the end of the book that I'd share. And the all-in adventure method, it's 7 steps that allow you to plan, lead, and debrief an adventure experience. And it can apply to whatever you're doing. But the 7 steps are, I'll just tell you what the 7 steps there are: what, why, how, who, environment, risk, decisions. And can and will, we're going to have an online course that I'm creating to go into the deep dive on how to use and implement and really understand these variables like a lot deeper, because issues that come out of adventure experiences when things go wrong can absolutely fall into one of those different categories. So, for example, the what was our objective. I'll just keep it very brief in this particular situation. The what was like our traverse to do between these two mountains. The why was, well, my partner and I, Greg Von Dorsen, we wanted to have a fun experience in the mountains. We wanted to attempt this thing. We wanted to be safe. The how was, we had our gear, our skills, our checklist, the rain gear, all the different things. We had our skills, the competencies for alpine mountaineering, and the things that we needed to understand and do and be able to bail if we need to and rescue and all that stuff. Now, the who, what, why, how, that's the skills and the who, this is a very important thing, okay? And this relates to life, to business, to anything that you're doing. The who is the continuous evaluation of your readiness state, okay? And your role in a team context, it's your role within whatever that thing that you're doing. So if you're doing an adventure, fatigue can change your decision making monumentally, and it can impact on how you're how you're approaching whatever it is you're doing. So that who, like, I get to the summit of this thing, one of the variables I'm asking myself is, am I physically capable of doing what is demanded right now? in a way that's going to keep me safe and my partner safe, right? Because you can be tired. It could be for lack of nutrition, hydration, lack of sleep from the night before, your current physical conditioning. I'm just going in way beyond my ability level, whatever that is. And you got to be constantly evaluating that. And do you have some other physical issue with your shoulder or your knee or whatever? And more importantly, does your partner, and do you know about it? Right. So that element of just being able to proactively say and use it as an assessment tool for my readiness, that's the who part. What's the what, why, how, who? Environment. In this particular scenario, the environment means the thunder clouds that are building, the condition of the rock once it gets wet. Is that going to be exponentially more dangerous when we go down in this situation? The conditions of the traverse. It's a very obscure traverse. Probably sees maybe one or two, maybe a year, if that. And so you got to be evaluating the conditions that you're in now and what is going to happen if something changes with the environment, i.e. the weather, right? And so the environment, risk, okay, probability and consequence. All right, what's the probability of us going down onto this traverse and being stuck in the middle of a thunderstorm, and what's the consequence if that happens? Do I have the right gear? Am I going to be able to make it off the thing? Do we have a rope that reaches enough if we need to rappel down this alternate way? You got to go through all these different scenarios and run them through and say what could possibly go wrong, right? And if the probability is high, you got to evaluate the consequence of an action that's going to be a negative thing, right? So there's all these things to the risk management aspect. And they all, guess what? They also all go back to the first four: the what, why, how, and who. Why are you there in the first place? Okay. You're there to have a fun time with your partner, that you might not want to go down and do this extreme traverse, like in this situation. And finally, ultimately, just how we started the conversation, it brings you to the decision points. And the decision points are a function of all of those other variables. And if you really, really go into them in depth, then you're going to be able to make a good decision in the moment. And to me, in my experience, people don't do this. People do not go through and understand and have a method for evaluating all these things so that you can have a safe, ongoing experience. And more often than not, it works out fine. But guess what? You can have conflict with your partners. You can have friction. You can have emotional issues, having all these different things that don't go so great as well too. But ultimately, I want people to stay alive and make good decisions, and not just be able to stay alive, but like genuinely optimize the outdoor adventure experience or the life experience using this method, because there's, life's too short to have arguments, that aren't productive, that could have been avoided by better communication,
There's nothing more drastic or, devastating than somebody losing a life or losing a physical capability. However, it's also, there's some damage that's done by near misses when people don't feel heard, or they feel like bad decisions were made. That creates some damage as well. I think you hit it on the head by having the awareness of what is my cognitive ability at this time. Am I able to assess well? Because if I'm fatigued, if I'm dehydrated, if I'm hungry, if I'm hurting, that impacts my decision making. And that's like when for scuba diving, if one thing goes wrong, you assess it, and more often than not, one thing you can overcome, maybe even two things. But if multiple things go wrong, even if they're all small, you call the dive,
right?
Because you get that cascading effect. Oh, it's all small things, but three small things create a catastrophe. So
yeah, that's great. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I want to hear a little bit about, now you are one of the people, so I know hundreds of adventure. Well, first of all, how do you define adventure?
How do I define adventure?
Yeah.
I think, well, for me, the blanket, the big umbrella adventure is going into an experience with an unknown outcome.
Yes.
That's the foundation of it. You just don't know you can predict with some degree, but you're not sure. There's an unknown variable of predictability there.
And I ask that because I think that all these things that you say, and the 7 elements of going all in and all that, adventure stories come in business as well, and also in community and all these other places where you're stepping in and you've done all your homework and you're making decision intentionally, even though the outcome is not guaranteed, the outcome isn't defined. And that to me is the true mark of adventure. And there's too few people who they go out there and they'll do the open water stuff, they'll do the mountaineering back, they'll do all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the rest of their life, they're not necessarily transferring those lessons or those insights into the business world or into their family life or things like that, where they realize what's going to be best right now is if I take a step where it's like the lion's head and Indiana Jones. You don't see the path, but you know that's the step you got to take.
Right.
And what I was going to get at is, I know hundreds of experiential or adventure facilitators who want to start their own businesses, but I think that I might be able to count on one, maybe going into the second hand, of people who've done it successfully, have started their own business or carried their own business. If you were going to speak to especially facilitators, but anybody who's going to start their own business, what couple of words of advice would you have for those people?
Well, I would say go through the all-in adventure method.
I was just going to say, it's
each of the steps.
Yeah,
No,
chapter 18 in
gotta be, it wasn't easy starting my business, and it hasn't always been easy running it and continuing on the path of being an entrepreneur. And being an entrepreneur involves risk. It involves going all in. You have to be all in on your thing. And if you don't have the grit and you don't have the resilience and you don't have the desire to push through some of the challenging things, then you're probably not going to reap the rewards of having your own business, because there's lots of amazing, beautiful things about having your own business. And I absolutely encourage more entrepreneurship and more people that want to do that, and finding mentors to help you to reduce that curve when you are doing that. I mean, that'd be one thing. I would just say, find someone that's gotten the results that you want, the type of lifestyle that you want, the type of income you want, the type of service you want to provide, that has a similar thing that's been successful already, and see if you can go volunteer to work for that person, add value to that person somehow, and learn from that person. For the first 5 years I had my business, I was ferociously reading every personal development book, every business development book, every, Harvard Business Review would come out. I could recite every article was in it every single month, and I would be able to ask you questions about the case studies and, tell you what I would have done differently and everything else. It was constant personal development. And I think for me, one of the things that I love about having my business in our realm of team and leadership development is that it allowed me this capacity to say, okay, you have to learn and grow and develop. Same thing with the adventure stuff. But on the other side, I went to every Tony Robbins, seminar possible, many of them multiple times, tens of the hundreds of thousands of dollars I've invested in just that one guy. But guess what? I've had a return on investment for that, for studying and following and applying those principles that is beyond my wildest imagination. I mean, it literally changed my life and my business. But you have to be willing to do the hard work early on so that you position yourself as an expert to offer the value that you're going to be able to offer. And that's a very long answer, but those are
that's perfect.
Some of the things.
Because I think one thing, if I wanted to highlight one thing, what you said is look at the life that you want, not the business that you want, but the entirety of, if you just look at the business and you're looking at returns and all that kind of stuff, you're missing out. Because I know some really unhappy people who have businesses I would love to have, but I don't want their life.
Right.
And I love that holistic look at the people, not just the business they have, the life they have, the family, the social life, the fun, all that stuff, because that's going to play into it too.
I think having a very strong values clarification process at the beginning when you're going into the business for yourself and what you want your business to be about is important. And, all decision making is value clarification, right? So you got to decide on what's most important to you for the life that you're going to be creating and living. And this goes with like relationships, with partners, with family, what is most important, and drive everything that you're doing and creating for that, and that's going to provide some clarity. It's going to provide direction, and it's going to be, when you have clarity on the big decisions, all the little decisions are a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So before we wrap up, I want to do a quick lightning round. These are the ones that you just want to give quick answers, and you're not signing a contract that this is your answer for all time. But just a couple of questions just to get your thoughts right off the bat, whatever's top of your head. And first one is, besides All In Adventure Stories, what's your favorite book or media to give as a gift?
I'll go to The Obstacle is the Way. That was one of my favorites. Quick dive into Stoic philosophy. That combination, depending on who is reading it, The Obstacle in the Way and Meditations. The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. He's kind of a modern Stoic, and does a lot of Stoic stuff, teaching. And then Meditations by Marcus Aurelius is the deeper dive into Stoicism. So,
the original, yeah,
the original. Those two Stoic philosophy kind of books help me.
Okay, those are good ones. Those are good ones to stand on. Tell me, who would be one or two of your heroes right now?
Tim Ferriss is one of my heroes. Love, just what he's created, what he's done, what he's about, the people he interviews, the impact he has. And so, yeah, I emulate the concept of finding these amazing people that are doing unbelievable things in life, completely just mind-blowing in their areas of expertise, and then finding out what their strategies are for life and how they've done it. It's so.
And then before him promoting it, he tries it. He's another one who lives his life as a laboratory.
He does. Yeah.
And I got to say, his podcast inspired me to do this one, because he said, hey, I started this podcast because I knew I wasn't good at it, and I wanted to learn how to ask good questions.
Right.
And that's my same thing is, and he was right. You look back, if you listen to his early podcasts, they're horrible. and he doesn't do a good job, but now he turns it into a conversation, and it's not just getting the person to spill their guts. It's the interaction that they have that adds value.
Yeah, so, I completely agree. And, there's a lot of hesitation when you're starting something new, right? And you can expect to suck at it, and it's okay.
Right. So you hear
that anyway.
Yeah, you hear the phrase, anything worth doing is worth doing well, but the lesser known phrase is anything worth starting is we're starting poorly. The crass interpretation I have is, if you want to get good, you got to suck. So,
right.
Well, thank you, Tim. This has been wonderful. And I could ask you questions about your approach and what you're doing, and then just listen to stories all day long. But our listeners and our watchers, the people out there, you guys, check out All In, and then you're going to get all those stories, not even all the stories, but you'll get a primer on what not only the All In stories, but also the methodology, how you adapt All In to your world. And yeah, it might be about going on a extended bike ride or running or whatever, but it could also be, I think that same methodology applies to if you're starting up an organization or company, or you're stepping into a new relationship, a new hobby, anything goes down, All In works. And it's not, you can't throw it away. You can't just say, okay, just get All In. And it's not a bumper sticker. This is a methodology that not only gets you into new and expanding your worldview, but does it in a way that keeps it enjoyable and continuous learning. So, Tim, thank you for the time.
Thank you, John. What a pleasure.